Okay, so I'm going to start this right away right now. So this is Michelle Supper. She will be talking to you tomorrow about ServiceNow. She's standing in this slot for her colleague, whose name I can't remember. Dale, who is not here today. The talk that everybody is so excited about is therefore not happening today. If you were absolutely dedicated to seeing that talk as the only thing that was better than something you desperately also wanted to see, you can go now. However, I would recommend you stay here and listen to a talk that didn't exist this morning, although apparently there's a white paper backing it up, so I would expect it to be very good. But it is very much the an FDE kind of thing. So I will let you explain the story behind the talk and then into the talk. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm not Dale Cheeseman. So, my name is Michelle Supper. I'm going to be talking to you about monumental transformations today. This is not about AI. Okay, this is a very unusual talk. I wrote a white paper. I'll explain it as we go through. But I hope you're going to get a lot out of it. And I don't know if timing's going to work because I literally wrote this morning while you were all in sessions. I didn't know I was going to talk until 9:30 today. So bear with me. Hopefully there'll be time for conversation and questions and input, and we can sort of figure this out. Who here works on transformation? Anybody?
Oh, come on. You all do it. You just don't know that.
Brilliant. Okay, so there'll be plenty of input for you, I hope, and plenty of feedback coming back, so it'll be good. Right, monumental transformations. Come on in. Okay. So this is me. So Dr. Michelle Supper, the PhD is in X-ray astrophysics. I discovered the galactic halo. If you have any questions about cosmology or astronomy, then do let me know because that's always fun as well. Okay, so how did I get to this point where I am now? I started off at Thales doing systems architecture, doing things with MODAF, Ministry of Defense Architecture Framework, designing things for the MOD and the Secret Service. I was a consultant enterprise architect to government, public sector, private sector. I've turned all kinds of businesses around. I've done all kinds of strange things and stuff I can't tell you about because I've signed the Official Secrets Act 3 times. I was, before ServiceNow, I was director of 3 forums at the Open Group. I actually worked for the Open Group, so running and looking after 1,000 enterprise architects and helping them to write standards. I've so far contributed to, I think, 2 books, 8 standards, several guides, white papers, many blog articles, and still doing more writing. I want to be publishing a paper today, but I'm going to be presenting about it instead. So the paper will be coming soon. I've been in enterprise architecture now for 16 years, still learning. I will learn from all of you. My current role is Principal Enterprise Architect at ServiceNow. I'm also the EMEA Enterprise Architecture Advisor. If you find yourself working with anyone from ServiceNow and they say guided architecture, that's a methodology that I created. I've now trained 570 of my colleagues globally how to do that. So that's the method that we use. So please find me on LinkedIn. You will find QR codes. I like QR codes, they're useful. So join me on LinkedIn. When I publish that white paper, you'll be able to download it and read it from there. Okay, everyone ready? Good. Look at it. Still see phone. Wait. Okay. Let's kick off with a quote from Aldous Huxley to get us in the mood. But men do not learn very much from the lessons of history. It's the most important of all the lessons of history. Okay, we need to learn from history, otherwise we will repeat mistakes. So that's what this is in the spirit of. Learning the lessons of history. Not too far from the ServiceNow office in central London stands the Monument, which you can see in that picture, the big column. The Monument is a unique but often disregarded landmark in the great city. I don't suppose that many people appreciate it as I do, as an eloquent testament to the power of enterprise architecture, particularly in relation to the most ambitious transformation projects. As a consultant enterprise architect, I've been engaged in transformations of all sizes, from small businesses and creating new target operating models through multi-billion-pound defence contracts and onwards to the creation of an entire cognitive city in Saudi Arabia. So, I'm often asked to resolve problems that have arisen while an established transformation program is in flight. Despite huge variations in scale and industry, I've noticed that the same problems arise repeatedly. Have you seen similar problems in the transformations you do? Over and over again, yeah? People failing to learn from history. Well, of course, I'm not going to discuss situations of customers and clients without their permission. There's nothing to prevent us from learning about the Great Fire. It happened long enough ago that we're safe. So please join me on this exploration of the Great Fire, Old London and the Monument. And along the way, I'm going to share some enterprise architecture insights, which I hope are going to inform and inspire your approach to large-scale transformation. London in 1666 was cramped. It was densely populated, extremely unsanitary, and unhygienic and revolting. In the 2 years before the fire, there was the Great Plague of London. There was an outbreak of the bubonic plague, and it killed more than 68,000 people. That was nearly a quarter of the city's population. This cartoon comes from 1665. So this is what the people of London were experiencing at the time. Death everywhere. There's someone outside. Come in. To give you an insight into what the buildings were like, this is St. Bartholomew's Gatehouse. So it shows you the style of buildings that existed in London around that time before the fire. The buildings themselves were cramped, timbered or half-timbered, and even at that time, they were ancient. So the stonework on the ground floor of the gatehouse was 400 years old at the time of the fire. Here what we're seeing is legacy architecture in action, newer structures that are underpinned by older foundations and ancient infrastructure. And this is something that if you think about the parallel to maybe a large organization, a government organization or a bank, you'll see this everywhere. Ancient infrastructure, newer structures on top. Moving on to the Great Fire and its aftermath. Thomas Fariner was a baker. On Sunday, September the 2nd, 1666, that's 359 years ago today, a straight ember from the oven in Thomas Bakery on Pudding Lane sparked a major conflagration which swept through the city of London. Fanned by strong easterly winds, the fire spread quickly from one timber frame building to the next. Over the course of 4 days, the Great Fire of London, as it came to be known, razed the city, consuming 13,200 houses, 87 churches, and 52 livery company halls where most of the trade and commerce took place within London. Approximately 100,000 people suffered the complete destruction of their homes, together with the loss of all of their possessions. Remarkably, only six deaths were officially recorded. But given the high incidence of overcrowding, poverty, and vagrancy in the city at the time, it's more than likely that the true death toll was much larger. But they only recorded 6 deaths. And that's a contemporary painting of what the fire was like. We get a sense of the scale. When you imagine all the buildings made of wood and the whole of central London going up. Over the subsequent 3 years, London rose like a phoenix from the ashes, not just rebuilding, but reinventing itself. It transformed from a ramshackle medieval city, characterized by narrow, winding streets and wooden buildings, into a glorious cityscape of church spires, wide avenues, and regulated brick-built houses. The work was done quickly, but still with great care and attention and quality to detail. Centuries later, many of the buildings emerging from that time are considered national treasures, including St. Paul's Cathedral, whose dome inspired the design of the US Capitol building in Washington, D.C. If you ever wonder why that looks very familiar, it's based on St. Paul's. The cathedral cost around £1 million to build at the time. That's equivalent to £162 million today. And it was partially funded by a special tax on coal coming into the Port of London, which was levied to rebuild the city after the Great Fire. So they raised money from coal, which I think is wonderful karmic retribution. So here we are. Raising the monument. This is the monument. The monument was commissioned to memorialize the fire. It was designed by two great polymaths, Dr. Robert Hooke and Sir Christopher Wren, and I think they would have really enjoyed this conference if they were here. As you'd expect, it's far more than a simple structure. It's a freestanding fluted Doric column. It's 202 feet in height, equivalent to the distance of the base of the column from the bakery where the fire started. It's topped by a gilded flaming copper urn that represents the Great Fire. The inside of the monument used to house lenses for a zenith telescope, enabling the column to be used by astronomers to map the precise positions of stars, both a practical and a symbolic design feature. It represents renewed mastery over the natural world after the chaos of the fire. The column also contains a spiral staircase of 311 steps. I have climbed these steps. It takes a lot of effort, but you can climb up to a balcony at the top and have a look at the view. Originally, it would have provided spectacular panoramic vistas across the newly rebuilt city and beyond. An advert, if you like, for the newly rebuilt city. These days, the monument is somewhat hemmed in by larger buildings, but it still offers a very good view of Tower Bridge and city skyscrapers. There are two lengthy inscriptions on the base of the column. They're in Latin, and then 3 years after they were put there in Latin, they were translated to English, which is convenient, although I can read Latin. The first panel gives a concise but evocative and heartfelt report of the fire itself. So I'll read it out for you. In the year of Christ 1666, on the 2nd of September, at a distance eastward from this place of 202 feet, which is the height of this column, a fire broke out in the dead of night, which, the wind blowing, devoured even distant buildings and rushed devastating through every quarter with astonishing swiftness and noise. It consumed 89 churches, gates, the Guildhall, public edifices, hospitals, schools, libraries, a great number of blocks of buildings, 13,200 houses, 400 streets. Of the 26 wards, it utterly destroyed 15 and left 8 mutilated and half burnt. The ashes of the city, covering as many as 456 acres, extended on one side from the tower along the bank of the Thames to the Church of the Templars, on the other side of the northeast gate, along the walls to the head of the Fleet Ditch. Merciless to the wealth and estates of the citizens, it was harmless to their lives, so as throughout to remind us of the final destructions of the world by fire. The habit was swift. A little space of time saw the same city most prosperous and no longer in being. On the third day, when it had now altogether vanquished all human counsel and resource, at the bidding, as we may well believe, of heaven, the fatal fire stayed its course and everywhere died out. You can imagine the impact that the fire had on people at that time. It was utterly devastating. The destruction was complete, but concentrated in a relatively small area. 13,200 houses obliterated over 456 acres. By comparison, the recent Palisades fire in Los Angeles in January of this year destroyed 6,837 homes and other buildings and burned a total of 23,448 acres. So a much bigger space, far fewer homes. It also gives an indication of the density of London at that time.
Yes.
Given the devastating emotional, physical and financial losses from both the plague and the fire, it would have been understandable if the City of London had been abandoned by the people and left in ruin, but that didn't happen. Instead, King Charles II, our current king, King Charles III, King Charles II, took the opportunity to remake London, setting a clear, overarching vision that others could work together to create. This is detailed in the second panel on the monument, so more reading. Charles II, son of Charles the Martyr, King of Great Britain, France and Ireland, defender of the faith and most gracious prince, commiserating the deplorable state of things, while the ruins were yet smoking, provided for the comfort of his citizens and the ornament of his city, remitted their taxes, and referred the petitions of the magistrates and inhabitants of London to the Parliament, who immediately passed an act. The public works should be restored to a greater beauty, the public money to be raised by an imposition on coals, that churches and the Cathedral of St. Paul's should be rebuilt from their foundations with all magnificence, that the bridges, gates and prisons should be new made, the sewers cleansed, the streets made straight and regular, such as were steep levelled, and those too narrow made wider. Markets and shambles removed to separate places. They also enacted that every house should be built with party walls and all raised of an equal height in front, and that all house walls should be strengthened with stone or brick, and that no man should delay building beyond the space of 7 years. Furthermore, he procured an act to settle beforehand the suits which should arise respecting boundaries. He also established an annual service of intercession and caused this column to be erected as a perpetual memorial to posterity. Haste is seen everywhere. London rises again, whether with greater speed or greater magnificence is doubtful. 3 short years complete that which was considered the work of an age. I wish people would write like this these days. It's an impressive declaration and a more astonishing achievement. When we consider the major transformations and development projects of our own age, we are more likely to bring to mind the big failures, dogged by overruns and delays. Yet nearly 360 years ago, we have an entire city being rebuilt back better than ever from the ground up in next to no time. How did they get it so right? What lessons can we draw from their experience and apply to our own practice? So let's have a look. EA insights and lessons from the monument. What can we draw from those inscriptions? The first lesson I'm going to take is truth is vital. In the honest account of events given in the first inscription, the mistakes of the past were acknowledged, admitted and communicated to ensure that they would not be repeated in the future. So our first lesson, if mistakes are not admitted, then they will persist, and if failings are not corrected, they will only get worse as time goes on. So honest and regular reporting of metrics and safety for whistleblowers must be baked into the ethos and culture of your organization. Without these protective measures, it will not be possible to identify if a transformation program is starting to fall behind schedule or if it's failing entirely until it's too late to take corrective action. And this will hold true even if the reasons for the transformation are entirely positive. So, for example, if a country is preparing to host the Olympic Games and under pressure to construct expensive sports arenas and athlete accommodations in a short time, if things are starting to go off track, people need to be made aware immediately. Otherwise, you're 6 months away from hosting the games and there's no arenas. And what do you do then? The second lesson is to create an achievable vision. Without an overall architecture vision to guide developments, an organization can only reach its full potential by accident. By agreeing on a shared vision and ensuring that it was achievable, the city planners for London were able to budget properly, assign funds and resources, and restore much of the city in under 5 years, creating a beautiful, coherent city that we still appreciate today. One of the biggest failings we see in modern transformation is overambition. King Charles's vision for the new city is the first recognizable element of enterprise architecture that we can identify from the second inscription. Rather than allowing the city to be rebuilt piecemeal, the king gathered a team of brilliant architects, engineers and artists, and he appointed the greatest of them, Sir Christopher Wren, to be the commissioner of rebuilding for the city. Bless you. It's significant that Wren submitted a spectacular Paris-style plan, as shown here in the picture, for the redesign only 6 days after the fire.
Suspicious.
6 days. It was not accepted. Okay, it was not accepted because it was too ambitious. He wanted to flatten everything and start again. It was too ambitious. It would have taken too long. Despite the setback, Wren had the humility to adapt. He went on to achieve greatness by creating a vast range of new buildings, including 51 churches for the City of London and the magnificent St Paul's Cathedral, where he's buried. So please do visit his tomb. This is what Christopher Wren said: architecture aims at eternity. And this is a principle I live by. If I'm designing something, I'm designing it not for now, I'm designing it forever. Yeah, build that into anything that you make. The third lesson that we take from the inscription. The king didn't waste any time, says the inscription. It says he said he lifted the taxes from the citizens while the ruins were still smoking. He didn't wait. Change is always difficult, more so when it's forced by circumstances. By reducing the financial stress on the citizens, the king was able to get them on side in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. The goodwill was particularly important to secure because the people were needed to assist with the reconstruction effort. So there's no machines at that time. The rebuilding was done by hand. They needed people. And those people had to exist within London during years of hardship and inconvenience while their homes and businesses were rebuilt. They had to be on side. In modern thinking, the king is in the role of CEO or sponsor. Sponsors need to empathize with their stakeholders, especially when things have gone disastrously wrong. So if you're in a transformation and the CEO is being separated from his stakeholders, you have to get him to really understand, to communicate, coach him and get him to communicate with the stakeholders. For those of us who are engaged in those transformation programs, we should ask the following questions. What could we do to demonstrate empathy? How can we reduce disruption to the lives of the stakeholders while the changes are taking place? And how can we ease their transition into that future state, because change is hard and stressful? Fourth lesson, build back better. Parliament immediately passed an act that public works should be restored to a greater beauty. Yeah, we're not just replacing what was with the same. We're doing it better. This is an excellent policy. The decision to increase beauty is one of form over function, and it speaks to a deep-seated altruistic desire to improve the quality of life among the very long-suffering citizens of London. Don't forget, they'd just been through the plague.
Yeah.
They were living in a filthy city with open sewers and cesspits and death everywhere. And now it was in ashes. Okay? So while function is important, so is form. We can factor this into our own solutions if we design them to be beautiful and elegant. It's not just how they look, elegant in terms of mathematical elegance, keeping things simple, keeping things beautiful. When designing systems, consider how you're going to support accessibility for all. Think about how to automate processes and reduce process steps. How are you going to how are you going to simplify application landscapes and integrate your applications better, to make everything just work better? How are you going to design user interfaces for applications and portals which are clean and intuitive? Really, really important. Don't just put something there, make it worth using. Fifth lesson, be inclusive. The beautification of the city was to be achieved with public money to be raised by an imposition on coals. Given that the damage to the city was caused by fire, it's more than fitting that a coal tax was used to restore it. Raising money through tax helped to democratize the reconstruction. The people contributed proportionately to the beautification of their own city. It meant that they had a sense of pride and ownership, because every single one of them contributed proportionately to what they had. Our challenge when we are faced with transformation is how can we bring all the stakeholders with us together on that transformational journey? How can we make sure that everybody has a stake in what is happening? Our sixth lesson, This is St Bride's Church, which is right next to the ServiceNow office. Come visit me in the office, I'll show you that view that we can get immediately from the fifth floor where we are. Preserve culture. The churches and the Cathedral of St Paul's should be rebuilt from the foundations with all magnificence. When transforming an organisation, consider the culture and the ethos. Preserve what is good, because these are the things that define the identity of the organisation. Okay? If an organisation is long established with a distinct brand and approach, how can that be projected into the modern systems that you're trying to put in place? How do you keep hold of the things that are right? Information is good, you see, but sometimes people take it too far. Human beings like familiarity. At a time when most of the environment is changing, it can help psychologically to have some things that remain stable, especially things that anchor people in their culture. For London, it meant preserving the foundations of the ancient churches and the surrounding graveyards, hallowed ground, places that have been imbued with religious significance for centuries. They didn't move the churches, they rebuilt them on their same location. Okay. So, as a thought experiment, consider your own organisation. What are the distinct characteristics that define its culture and its ethos? If faced with the challenge of wide-scale transformation in Fujitsu, which things would you fight to preserve and protect to keep the uniqueness of your organisation? What would you protect?
FDEs.
FDEs, absolutely.
I was going to say innovation, but it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's a wonderful thing. It's lovely that you know how to acknowledge and respect and reward your engineers. It's lovely. Anything else that you would protect?
There's a lot I'd like to tear down. But the fire should have done that for us, right?
You might have to leave it with us. I think we're struggling a bit.
So we need a bakery.
Well, I go with diversity.
Nurturing our juniors.
Our seventh lesson, invest in infrastructure. That bridges, gates and prisons should be new made. It's an interesting choice of things to remake. In contrast to the churches, Parliament decided to invest in new infrastructure for the city. London had evolved organically, accreting layers of architecture, infrastructure and technology. If you can go back through the history of London, you can go all the way back, you've got Roman architecture, you've got other stuff, it accretes layer upon layer. At the same time, the city had grown to become one of the largest in Europe. Even before the fire, the transport and justice systems were no longer sufficient to meet the needs of the city's growing population. And so the opportunity to modernise and improve the infrastructure was grasped with both hands. We see similar patterns. So if we go to heavily regulated or risk-averse organisations, especially the ones which have had time and funds to develop an IT infrastructure over the course of several decades, I'm thinking here about government departments and banks, the ones with the money to spend on IT systems, right? They started spending on IT systems in the 60s, the 70s, and now they've still got the same systems. Right? So everything's built on top of it. Okay, these organisations have problems with their architecture often. The parallels become more obvious if we think of the data infrastructure as the transport system of a business. You've got the data flowing around, and the governance and data quality as justice. Okay, it's an exact parallel. For major digital transformation, we have to make sure that we review and improve the data infrastructure layers and the governance structures of the organisation we're trying to transform. Very, very important. It should be prioritised, especially if the organisation intends to adopt AI, since I had to mention AI in this presentation.
You did it, well done.
Right? Especially if the organisation intends to adopt AI, since fast retrieval and processing of accurate, high-quality data will be essential. You can't put rubbish into AI unless you're rubbish out again 10 times quicker than you would have got it if you just did it yourself. Okay, so we need good data and we need good governance. if anyone has an organisation that needs architecture principles, I have a great architecture principles white paper, and I'll give you the link to that later. You're welcome to use that with your customers. Number 8, prioritise humanity. The sewers cleansed, the streets made straight and regular, such as was steep, levelled, and those too narrow made wider. Markets and shambles, shambles are slaughterhouses, removed to separate places. Okay. While the old street plan was mostly retained, the architects took the opportunity to make adjustments that would improve the quality of life for the city's inhabitants. So they eased congestion, they made their roads easier to navigate, they made the city more manageable and healthier, they put hygiene in place. Doing all these things promoted health and trade for centuries to come. If they hadn't have made the streets wider, we'd be in a similar situation to the one you'd find if you go to Marrakesh and you go to the old Medina. You ever been to Marrakesh?
Yeah.
If you go to the old city, the Medina, the streets are about 1 metre wide. Okay, and then you're surrounded on both sides by riads, big old stone-built walls. You can't, there's no horizon, you can't see anything. It's just a maze of tiny roads, so small that cars can't get through, and so the traffic is donkeys, pedestrians, and mopeds. Right? It looks beautiful, but it's, you know, the fact that you can't navigate that place, that you can't get through it, it's held that area back for centuries. If you go 3.5 miles down the road, you get to Gulez, which was under French rule. They have huge open avenues, boulevards, and that's where you find all the big streets and the international, you know, shops and shopping malls and the flats and everything else. Yeah, because they invested in the infrastructure, that area has prospered. So, too often profits are put ahead of people. By sacrificing space, profit, to allow for space and light and air, the city prospered. London could have made the decision to say, we're going to have the same density of housing, we're going to cram everyone back in again to where they were. Right? Instead, they sacrificed that for wider streets, and that way the city has been able to grow. The lesson. To design a healthy business or system, we have to balance technical considerations with the well-being, safety, and user experience of the stakeholders. Number 9. They also enacted that every house should be built with party walls and all raised of an equal height in front, that all house walls should be strengthened with stone and brick, that no man should delay building beyond the space of 7 years. Furthermore, he procured an act to settle beforehand the suits, which should arise respecting boundaries. Governance. This is all about governance. Governance is essential to successful transformation. So, before the fire, the buildings were mostly made of tinder dry wood and other combustible materials. This was at a time when cooking, lighting, and heating were all achieved through burning oil, candles, or coal. And firefighters were non-existent. Given the situation, a catastrophe was inevitable. If it hadn't been from the bakery, then at some point in time the fire would have started elsewhere. And once it took hold, given the high density of flammable buildings and the total lack of precautions, there would have been nothing to stop it spreading. In the early stages of planning for the rebuild, these weaknesses were identified, acknowledged, and mitigated against. They introduced controls that restricted how houses could be built. The rules reined in more eccentric designs. They brought some visual coherence to the city. They ensured a baseline of safety. Essentially, they instituted a planning authority following a set of principles in a form that we can easily recognize as an early documented example of architecture governance. So, governance is essential if you want to transform, and you have to make sure that certain governance structures are in place. And this includes a clear set of requirements. Very important. I started my career in systems engineering, and the number of times I saw people investing hundreds of millions of pounds in systems that had no requirements was embarrassing. You have to have requirements. Architecture principles and policies. Make sure that you know how decisions are going to be made. A body to uphold these, such as an architecture governance board. Clear knowledge of the constraints that you have to work within. So, for example, is there a budget that must not be exceeded? HS2, I'm looking at you. Are there any physical limits to the size or capacity or structure of the system that you're creating? Must the product be completed in time for a particular event? Okay, what are the constraints? What are the limits that you're working with? And our last lesson here is communicate and remember. You also establish an annual service of intercession and cause this column to be erected as a perpetual memorial to posterity. We can learn 3 lessons from the King's memorials. The first one, communicate. Okay? Communicate. We must make special efforts to communicate the causes or triggers for the transformation, the architecture vision, progress, benefits, and outcomes to the wider circle of stakeholders, using language they will understand. When the monument was first put up, the inscriptions were there in Latin. At the time, most people couldn't read at all, and only the most educated could read in Latin. Okay? 3 years later, they translated them into English, and so now you have Latin and English translations. It didn't take them long to realize that they had to communicate better, and they fixed it. Bring people together. Set up regular events where the stakeholders can come together to commiserate, to support each other, mark progress towards recovery, or celebrate transition to new beginnings. It's all about the people. It's always about the people. If you're transforming, make sure that they come along with you and give them opportunities to process their emotions as they go through that journey. Okay? And document your architecture. The solutions that you design need to endure long beyond the time we work on them, and it has to be self-evident to others. So in the early years, the active memorial that the King put in place, the annual church service to pray for the safety of the city, would have been a very important part in the cultural life of the citizens. It was a chance to mourn together the people who and things that they'd lost. Okay? It was a chance for the community to remember the dangers of fire and take precautions against another occurrence. At some point in the intervening centuries, the tradition ended. There is no such service held in London now. I wish there was. He also put in place a passive memorial, and that's the monument, which still stands sentinel in London. And the fact that it's still there, still effective, is why I'm able to talk to you on this anniversary of the fire. It's still working, yeah, just standing there as a monument in London. With regards to architecture, something very close to my heart. If we need to explain our diagrams in order for them to be intelligible to other architects, then we have failed in our responsibility. The architecture deliverables that we make should have, they should be a clear strategic asset of any organisation. If you have an elegant enterprise architecture repository with a clear, well-maintained set of artifacts, that's going to help to maintain the efficiency and productivity of the business for years to come. It's going to ease any future transformation, and it's going to assist any change decisions that happen. So please keep your architecture clean and beautiful. So in summary, we've got these 10 lessons that we've gone through in this journey. Which of them do you think is the most important?
Ooh, first one.
First one, truth. Why?
Well, it's a fundamental foundation on which you build everything else on.
I'd say the second one. You've got to have a vision of where you're getting to. Without that vision, then even if everything's true, you're not actually going to get anywhere.
I'd say the fourth one. You're going to make mistakes. You've got to learn from mistakes and make better.
I like 3. I would have insight into the pain, because digital transformation or corporate transformation is as bad as building the city back. And that empathy sort of ties in there with the preserving of culture and so forth. But the empathy would be more important to me than the culture.
Well, it's a range, isn't it? I mean, like 9 constraints. I mean, if you don't understand the standards, you know, if you could start building on, I mean, you could start building on brick that over time is going to easily erode, and then the whole thing falls down within a short space of time. So you've got to understand
You don't want to build on
what
sand.
the requirements are and the structure's actually going to
Over
look.
here first. Yeah.
So I was thinking as you were talking about this, and this seems to be a phenomenally successful waterfall approach to implementing systems. But some parts of it, looking at agile, are almost completely opposed to it. So the thing about create an achievable vision, build back better, very different to thinking about minimal viable product.
Yeah.
The thing, architecture aims at eternity. I think in a lot of software development, it's the next bit all the time. Which one's right?
Oh, I don't like agile. Okay, so when it comes to agile, I'll get onto questions afterwards. I'll just address this very quickly. For me as an architect, I think agile has its place. But as an architect, I like to define the beginning and the end. How we're going to get from here to there is where agile sits. And you can choose any which path you want, but the beginning and the end should be fixed. Yeah, in description at least, if not in form. So it still gives you the freedom. But there are some things here like making sure that you document things so that other people can come and read it. So sometimes agile happens and it's used badly as an excuse to not document. And okay, you get your result out, but what happens in 5 years' time when someone wants to update your system? And now they don't know how it works. Yeah. So there's a balance, I think. Yes.
Yeah, for me, it's number 10 because, for example, trust, preserve culture, and everything. If we don't communicate, understand the stakeholders and other people, opinion, ideas, and so on, it's impossible to do most of them. So for me, it's number 10.
So we've had pretty much all the numbers. Cool.
I was going to say all of them.
So it's like good to have all for the preservals and eternity. So that's the important factor here.
Okay, I'm going to give you my opinion. Which is the most important lesson? To me, is prioritizing humanity. Right? By putting the health and safety and needs of users and others who are going to experience your systems, you put them first, then you live up to our responsibilities as architects. We're here to make the world a better place. We're here to create something that's going to endure. It's not going to just crumble to dust. It's not going to be wasted in 5 years. It's not going to be tomorrow's slum. We're going to create something that's going to be there for a long time. If you look at St. Paul's Cathedral, 350 years later, it's still there, and it's beautiful. Okay? To paraphrase Sir Christopher Wren, our architecture will aim for eternity. Okay? That's where, for me, that's where it is. It's not about building something for tomorrow, it's about building something forever. So, thank you for joining me on this exploration of the monument. I hope that you were able to weave the lessons identified in this paper into your own transformation programs. I hope they're going to help you to achieve the astonishing success witnessed by the citizens of London, so that you can say, haste is seen everywhere. London rises again, whether with greater speed or greater magnificence is doubtful. 3 short years complete that which was considered the work of an age. I want you to be able to say that in relation to your own work. So, thank you so much. More resources, they're here. If you want my latest paper about the monument, it will be published very soon, so do join me on LinkedIn and you'll get it there. Right, do we have time for questions?
So, great talk, and I'm really glad I stayed in this, in this one. But, so the large applications, SaaS platforms of today, do you think they'll still be around in 300 years?
I hope they're not. I hope they're not, because if they are, then it means that we haven't progressed. It means that we haven't learned, we haven't moved forward. Today, if you look at the Now platform, there's AI being used everywhere. When I joined the company 5.5 years ago, AI didn't exist. There was no such thing as ChatGPT. Right? So we are moving at a tremendous rate. So yeah, if in 300, hopefully ServiceNow will still be there in 300 years, but I don't think we'll be selling the same thing. Okay, in 300 years, it should be a very different world.
Yeah, even 100 years, we're going to have to be decentralized because we're going to have colonies on other planets, hopefully. Yeah. So the architecture will have to change.
If you think lockdown was bad, living on Mars is worse. That's another reason to build for eternity. You want to, if you're building something, think about the impact that you're having on Earth. You know, it's all well and good to say you want to go live on Mars, but actually living on Earth is so much easier. We want Earth to be good for as long as possible. So in your designs, make sure that what you do supports the health of the planet. Yes, any other questions? Yeah.
So you talk about building for eternity. I think one of the things that often gets tossed our way is over-engineering the solution, which there may be multiple lenses that draws someone to the conclusion. Someone who may be in charge of the finance will say, well, it's too expensive, you over-engineered it, you've made it too expensive. We want to deliver something that's functionally equivalent but less expensive, for example. So there's a range, isn't there, in terms of that? So how do you balance all those things when you've got a number of stakeholders with different points of view as what those lenses are?
So, two aspects, I think. The first one would be architecture principles. So the first thing I do is get my stakeholders together and establish principles which determine how we're going to make decisions. And that should stop the excesses. So if somebody is trying to make something way overcomplicated, overspecified, very expensive, if they are working within governance, within principles that everyone has agreed to, then they shouldn't be able to get to that extreme. The principles themselves should help to constrain them. If you download the principles white paper, you'll find in there a description that I've put in about enterprise level principles, but also transformation program level principles. So even if you can't define the principles for a whole organization, you can do it just for the program you're on, and that can be very helpful to keep people in line. The other part is elegance. So having a principle of elegance in design stops you from over-egging the pudding. Okay, you're trying to keep things functional and safe and beautiful, and you get all the functionality with as simple a design as possible, which means that in terms of maintenance, it's far easier going into the future as well, so you save money that way. So elegance would be my key. Any questions? Do we have time? I don't know when we're.
Well, it's supposed to be at 3:10 to the next session, so
We got time.
I think it's time to make everybody run. Thank you everyone very much. Thank you, sir. Very welcome. Oh, yeah, probably.
You are fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. It's a wonder, sir. Fantastic.
Stop this recording,
Wonderful. So they've got aspects of platform, aspects of medicine.